The Mitsubishi F-3 exists because Japan spent 17 years refusing to compromise. While other nations bought American fighters or copied Russian designs, Japanese engineers built something different to stealth aircraft that operates in the electromagnetic spectrum like nothing China has ever encountered. At 06:03 hours on a January morning in 2025, two of these fighters crossed into contested airspace above the Senkaku Islands. Chinese S-400 radar operators stare at screens showing nothing but ocean clutter and weather returns. 8 J-20 stealth fighters scramble from Ningbo Air Base to intercept what ground controllers insist are ghost contacts. The Chinese pilots activate their radars, search the sky, and find empty air. The F-3 pilots sitting 87 kilometers away watch every move the J-20s make, lock weapons on all 8 targets, and prove that China's multi-billion-dollar stealth program just failed its first real test. What happens next reveals exactly why Beijing panics when Japanese engineers stop buying foreign and start building domestic. In October 2024, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries delivers the first operational F-3 to the Japan Air Self-Defense Forces 3rd Air Wing at Misawa Air Base. The aircraft represents $40 billion in investment and Japan's first fully indigenous 5th-generation fighter. China's Ministry of National Defense releases a statement calling it provocative and destabilizing. That statement ages like milk in the sun. The F-3's radar cross-section measures smaller than 0.001 square meters, roughly the size of a marble on radar. Compare that to China's J-20, which registers at approximately 0.05 square meters because of its canard design and exposed engine nozzles. The F-3 uses a conformal nose design with serpentine air intakes that hide the engine blades completely. Chinese radar operators searching for this aircraft are essentially trying to spot a hummingbird in a hurricane. Here's where the math becomes brutal for China. The F-3 mounts the Mitsubishi Electric Type 27 active electronically scanned array radar. This system tracks 60 targets simultaneously at ranges exceeding 250 kilometers while operating in low probability of intercept mode. The radar frequency hops 10,000 times per second, making it virtually impossible to jam or detect. When Chinese electronic warfare officers try to locate the F-3's radar emissions, they're chasing ghosts. To F-3's liftoff from Naha Air Base in Okinawa, their mission profile: conduct freedom of navigation patrols near the disputed Senkaku Islands, which Japan calls Senkaku and China claims as Daya. At 06:03 hours, both fighters enter the air defense identification zone that China unilaterally declared in 2013. Chinese ground controllers at Wenshu Air Base detect nothing on their Type 05-D destroyer radar systems positioned 80 kilometers south. By 06:37 hours, the F-3 pilots activate their Mitsubishi AAM-4B air-to-air missiles. These missiles use dual-mode Seeker's active radar and imaging infrared with a range of 150 kilometers. The missiles sit in internal weapons bays, maintaining the aircraft's stealth profile. Chinese J-20 scrambling from Ningbo still haven't detected the Japanese fighters, even though they're now only 95 kilometers apart. The PLAAF pilots make their fatal mistake at 06:01 hours. They switch their radar to active search mode, trying to find the ghost contacts their ground controllers keep reporting. The moment those J-20 radars go active, the F-3's electronic warfare suite, the Mitsubishi Type 28 Integrated Defensive Electronic Countermeasures system, logs every emission. The Japanese pilots now know exactly where every Chinese fighter is positioned, their radar frequencies, their altitude, and their heading. The Chinese pilots know nothing except that their screens show empty sky. Here's the technical reality that dooms the J-20s. Their radar operates in the X-band and frequency range, approximately 8 to 12 gigahertz. The F-3's radar absorbent material coating specifically targets this frequency range, converting radar energy into heat that dissipates across the airframe. Chinese radar waves hit the F-3 and essentially vanish into the aircraft's skin. It's like screaming into a soundproof room and wondering why nobody hears you. At 06 for 8 hours, Japanese pilots achieve radar lock on all 8 J-20s simultaneously. The Type 27 radar provides targeting data directly to the AAM for B missiles through a secure data link that updates 50 times per second. Chinese pilots received no warning, no radar warning receivers alert, no missile lock tones, nothing. Their Russian-supplied SP-030 to radar warning systems remain silent because they're designed to detect conventional fighter radars, not low probability of intercept systems operating in frequency hopping mode. The lead Japanese pilot reports to NAHA Air Control multiple hostile contacts, bearing 274, Angels 38, range 87 kilometers. Weapons-free posture confirmed. The radio transmission uses frequency hopping encryption that changes channels to 100 times per second. Chinese signals intelligence operators monitoring Japanese frequencies hear only burst static. By 0651 hours, the tactical situation becomes a lesson in why stealth technology combined with superior sensor fusion equals absolute dominance. The F-3 pilots maintain their missile locks while Chinese J-20s continue searching. One Chinese pilot breaks radio discipline and transmits in clear, unable to acquire target. Request vector from ground control. That transmission confirms what Japanese intelligence suspected Chinese pilots cannot operate effectively without ground-based radar support. The sensor advantage translates into something even more devastating than weapons locks. The F-3's data link system transmits real-time targeting information to Japanese Aegis destroyers positioned 200 kilometers south. Those destroyers now track all 8 J-20s using the F-3's radar data, turning the entire engagement space into a kill zone where Chinese fighters fly blind while every Japanese platform sees them perfectly. At 0702 hours, Chinese ground controllers order their J-20s to return to base. The PLAAF claims they successfully intercepted Japanese aircraft. Flight tracking data and Japanese Defense Ministry telemetry tell a different story. Chinese fighters never came within 80 kilometers of the F-3S and never achieved weapons lock. Within 48 hours, China's response reveals their desperation. The Central Military Commission announces an emergency $15 billion program to upgrade J-2O radar systems and develop new radar-absorbent materials. They contact Russian defense contractors about purchasing Su-57 fighters, the same aircraft Russia itself produces in tiny numbers because of technical problems. China also accelerates development of their FC-31 fighter program, essentially admitting their current stealth technology cannot match Japan's capabilities. The technical gap becomes even more obvious when we examine the engine situation. The F-3 uses the IHIXF9-1 turbofan engine, producing 16,500 kilograms of thrust with full afterburner. This engine incorporates three-dimensional thrust vectoring, giving the F-3 post-stall maneuverability that exceeds even the F-2 Raptor. China SJ-20 relies on Russian AL-31F engines that produce only 12,500 kilograms of thrust and lack thrust vectoring. In a close-range dogfight, the F-3 turns inside the J-20's turning radius by a full 15 degrees, which translates to a dead Chinese pilot. China now faces a problem with no easy solution. Japan operates from bases in Okinawa, Kyushu, and Hokkaido, all within 900 kilometers of Chinese coastal military installations. The F-3's combat radius extends 1,400 kilometers with external fuel tanks, meaning Japanese fighters can strike targets deep inside Chinese airspace while remaining nearly invisible to Chinese defenses. The PLAAF's numerical advantage they field over 1,500 combat aircraft compared to Japan's 370 becomes irrelevant when Chinese radar cannot detect Japanese stealth fighters. Beijing's propaganda machine shifts into overdrive, claiming the F-3 violates regional peace and stability. Chinese state media publishes articles questioning the F-3's actual capabilities, suggesting Japanese claims are exaggerated. But internal PLAAF documents leaked to Japanese intelligence tell a different story. Chinese pilots report severe disadvantages in beyond visual range combat and inability to maintain situational awareness against Japanese stealth platforms. That is military speak for we getting dominated and we do and know how to fix it. The United States watches this development with intense interest. Japan's F-3 program demonstrates that American allies can develop indigenous fifth-generation fighters that potentially exceed US capabilities in specific areas. The F-3's sensor fusion architecture integrates data from ground-based radar, AWACS aircraft, and satellite systems faster than the F-35's current software allows. Japanese engineers achieved this by building the system from scratch rather than trying to retrofit legacy code. China spent decades stealing Western military technology and reverse engineering Russian designs. They invested billions in developing stealth fighters that look impressive during air shows. But when Japanese engineers combined meticulous attention to detail with advanced materials science and sensor integration, they created an aircraft that makes China's best fighters look like targets in a shooting gallery. The encounter over the Senkaku Islands proves a fundamental truth. Stealth technology isn't just about radar-absorbent paint and careful shaping. It's about integrating every system radar, electronic warfare, communications, and weapons into a cohesive package that operates as one unified sensor. Japan understood this. China apparently still doesn't. So here asks the question I want you to consider. If a nation with Japan's relatively small defense budget and limited resources can develop a stealth fighter that shocks a military superpower, what does that say about the value of indigenous innovation versus copying other people's homework? Does China's massive defense spending actually translate to combat effectiveness, or are they building expensive showpieces that fail when confronted with real technological superiority?